Hi, I'm Robert Majors, and this is Compassionate Las Vegas, the podcast.
Welcome to Compassionate Las Vegas. I'm your host, Will Rucker, and joining us today is Robert Majors. He is a passionate advocate for the unhoused and working towards creating solutions that provides affordable housing to every person who wants it. So, Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So I start the show the same way every time, and it's with this question. I promise it's the hardest of the interview, but it's also one of the ones that helps us to set a level. And it's simply this: how do you define compassion?
I'm pretty blunt with my words. So I think compassion means with compassion, or to share compassion, or share passion, which is suffering. So like a sharing of suffering, like if somebody else is suffering, you sort of participate in that suffering with them, which will help alleviate their suffering. That's how I see compassion.
Yeah, I think that that's a perfect way to define it and going to the actual meaning of the word at the heart. So exactly. And when we're talking about suffering, in these days, we have more than enough to share in, whether it is the issue we're talking about today with homelessness or simply stress and anxiety from the uncertainty of what lies ahead. All of us have a measure of suffering, and when we recognize that we can suffer together and alleviate that, we really see a brighter future. So thank you for that definition.
You're welcome.
Now I want to dive into this. Homelessness has been on the news around Las Vegas for a number of reasons, really since the start of COVID, whether it was the encampment that was demolished, or when they had to have the homeless on the concrete in the parking lot, or just some content around ordinances that have been passed. So we've kind of made national headlines around this for a while. I just want to open up with you sharing your perspective on the situation here on the ground and how you see it.
So I think a lot of Las Vegas and a lot of grassroots community started organizations and efforts have done a really good job trying to be compassionate with the homeless people and go out and share. I think the community at large has been really supportive during this whole COVID epidemic, and it's been going fairly well, in my opinion, from doing this for years, 10 years now. The amount of community that's shown support since COVID started has been great. The response from the government, City of Las Vegas, City of North Las Vegas, that has been about the same that they've been giving. It's just been escalated and more emphasized because of the pandemic. And it's sort of making them rethink how they handle their business. And unfortunately, their rethinking hasn't been the best or most productive way of handling the situation. So I think that it showed a lot of our room to improve, and hopefully the communication with the City of Las Vegas and the whole valley here will open up, and we can start coming up with better solutions like they've been doing in Oregon and Washington and LA. Now they have a small LA mission community. So hopefully the communication starts growing, so that community that's so passionate and has a good heart will have a voice with the officials and the government who's making the rules and has the money to help.
Yeah, and that's certainly one of our goals here at Compassionate Las Vegas, is to help these conversations take place and to make space for everyone's perspective to be validated and heard and seen and even felt. So if you don't mind, would you just kind of take us back to 10 years ago when you began working in this area and just give us a high level overview of what exactly you've been working towards?
Well, when I first started, it was for school, and I was just doing some community service work. And I went out to serve at a soup line, which I still volunteer with today, the Las Vegas Catholic Worker. And I started serving out there. They served about 150 people, and it was a really simple process. I fit in really smoothly. They gave me a job. There was no paperwork. There was no even to volunteer. It was really easy. So it gave me a perspective of okay, I can help people and I don't have to jump through hoops to do this. I could just come, show up, and do what I got to do and continue with my day. And eventually that made my day. It was early in the morning, and it became really the highlight of my day. So eventually moving forward, I started pursuing the path of trying to help a little more, trying to think a little bit more about community and do things on my own. I started doing my own fundraising projects, doing different events, talking about issues to the community. I tried to do as much as I could to sort of get involved into that world. Eventually, it formed I formed a more solid structure for what I wanted my life to be about, and I decided that I wanted to continue my pursuit for architecture and design and get an engineering degree. So I went for engineering, and this, my involvement in community has put me into different positions, building with my hands and learning skills. And eventually it led me last year to building these small huts for homeless people at this encampment. And it was a really affordable thing. I'm glad I had all the experience, A, with the people that were serving, and B, with being able to build to marry the two into this work that I enjoy and is something that you could actually see physically being done to try to help people. So it's not the end solution, but it's a good stage of my path.
So let's dive into that piece there, because that, of course, is another thing that made national news. And it actually came up in one of our interfaith council meetings. We just got some news about it. And, I'm I don't know what's happening. So I don't know the background. I don't know anything. So I wasn't going to make a judgment about it in that moment. But it did send me on a quest to investigate and to figure out what exactly is happening. So let's start at the beginning of this encampment. How did you plan where you were going to build, how you were going to build? How did you recruit people to help and fundraise? How did you coordinate with the city to get the services on site? Just kind of walk us through the entire process.
Okay. So first of all, it wasn't just me. There was a lot of people in this involved, and the thing I like most about where I'm working with the community is that it's not a structure of this person has to answer to this person and this person. Everybody's on the same field. It's horizontal. We communicate with each other. Everybody is able, as they are able to, do what they can. So this encampment that we're talking about was a place where multiple organizations provide services. People come together, they knew the people, and at some point I ended up being part of that group of people. And then the idea came about, hey, we should build some huts and we could put them here so that they have more of a decent way of living. So Food Not Bombs is another organization that does a soup line out here. They did a post about, doing some fundraising to build these huts. and they raised enough money to build their first one. I was a fan of the huts already. It was a project. The huts, if you haven't seen them, are like just like a little tarp over a metal mesh with two walls. It has a front door that you could lock and a back window. And there's enough room in there for like a queen size bed. And of course, some like walking space. So we decided we could try to build one of these huts, and we raised like $2,500. And I got with the guy to build them. He was like, I know some people that are living on this lot, like in this encampment. And that's the first thing you want to know. Like, you kind of want to have a relationship with people and say, hey, we want to build this. Is this something you want? So first we had to see who was interested. And of course, people are interested in getting a safer place to stay. So we started building. And at first we were just building in one of the members' backyards. And we built the first hut, I think, for like $1,000. And it was a bigger hut. And we set that up. And somebody was living in it. And that hut actually got burned down. And it was we were pretty upset about the whole thing. Because
before we move past that, so the first one you built in someone's backyard for about $1,000.
Yes.
You said it's 10 by 10.
That one was a 10 by 10 hut. It was a lot of work.
A lot of work went into it, a lot of room, and you actually are the engineer that designed it.
I designed it. The concept for the structure was, it's from the Northwest. They've been building these for the homeless people in the Northwest to live in. So already I know that it's going to be good against like harsh weather. They get snow. So we just had to protect from a little bit of like coldness. So yeah, we insulated it. We bought the parts. We designed it. I have some experience designing and constructing. So yeah, we did it all. It was actually just me and another guy named Joey.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's incredible. That's initiative, that's compassion in action, wanting to solve the problem of someone not having a home, giving them a place to stay. Now, you mentioned it burned down. When that happened, well, if you don't mind, how did it burn down? But then secondly, when that happened, how did you feel?
So we built it. We had somebody living in it. The person living in it, everybody knew. And, it's an encampment of 150 people. So I think that person might have like overstepped a boundary with somebody. And I think it was like an act of like lashing out at this person to like burn down their hut when they were gone. And it was like, somebody sent me a video of it. And I was, first of all, like, I know that person and I know the valuable stuff they had in there. And it was just like horrible that they lost their stuff. That was the big thing. I knew we had plans to build more. And I knew like people would be a little devastated by this, but from being like around for so long and seeing like the way the homeless people are treated, and the way the city treats the homeless, like they come out with dumpsters and just like pick up encampments and throw all their stuff away weekly. And it's a really like devastating thing to just like experience once, but they experience this weekly. So to me, I'm like, okay, we're going to keep building this. I was down about it, but I know that it's a long road to get to where we got to go. And there's going to be accidents and there's going to be, setbacks. So I was upset about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it didn't stop you. Say that again?
It was our hardest hut to build too. After that, we made them a little smaller and easier to build. And we did keep going.
Yeah. And so with the new design or the redesigned smaller version, what was different about it besides size?
Well, it was, we reduced the cost to $600 per unit. Mm-hmm. We started getting like a process down to build them that was simpler. There were less pieces. There's only 3 pieces now. For the bigger hut, there were like 5 pieces. So there's 3 pieces. And that's really important, especially if you're going to start bringing in volunteers like we have. We get 10 volunteers a week now to build these huts. So when you're bringing in volunteers who have never cut anything before, it's good to have a set like plan that you can say, okay, this is how we're going to do this. And by the end of the day, they got the confidence of being able to go out and probably build one on their own. You know, it's really like a fun process. So
did I hear you right when you said the total cost for one of the units is $600?
$600.
And so, please feel free to say, you know, that's too intrusive or anything like that. But I just kind of want to dive into how this is manufactured and what's included, because I have not seen them. And so I don't have a good reference point. Perhaps you could share a photo that I could include later in the broadcast. But with this unit that was $600, you said there's insulation. So is that against heat and cold or just cold?
Heat and cold. Insulation basically slows down the transfer of heat. So if it's warm inside, it's going to stay warm inside. If it's cold inside, it's going to stay cold inside as the day changes. So it is insulated. You could always insulate more, but it just costs more money. Like when we have more money to spend, we've been double insulating some of them, which will cost an extra $100. So it is insulated. The two walls are insulated. The door is a regular 2-foot door. It has a lock and key, so people can lock their stuff inside of the hut during the day, and they don't have to carry it around. They can go take care of their business and come back to it. It has a window that you could open for ventilation. The hut itself is have you ever seen a Conestoga wagon?
No.
It's like the old like Western wagon that's covered. It's a covered wagon.
Yeah.
It's got that shape. It's named after that wagon because it's got that shape and it's got the front and the back, and it's just like a small living space. Dimensions are 5 by 10, and it's got like a wooden floor. A tarp covers it. They could be more attractive and cute, but you know, for the price that we're making them, we kind of have to cut back on the aesthetics.
Yeah. So for $700, you can double insulate and provide a space. You said that's 5 by 10 so an individual could get out of the elements in a sense and into some sort of shelter that has a lock and key. It gives them a little storage for their belongings, and they feel a sense of safety and security.
Yes.
From this perspective, it sounds completely reasonable. So what I want to get into now is how many did you build? And then how did you go about collaborating with the city to get the permitting and things done? And then what happened?
Okay, so we built 26 of them up in that encampment by the time they were destroyed. The first time. We've built about 9 or 10 of them since. And those are like, we're strategizing different ways of putting them up. But for the ones at the encampment, we started to build them. By the time we got like our 4th one up there, the city of Las Vegas, Metro, they were coming in and out with their organizations, trying to help the encampment, trying to monitor it, see what's going on. And we were talking to them when they were there. And they said, well, those are beautiful. This encampment won't be here forever, but when it's time to move this encampment, we'll let you know, and we'll have these moved to a place. And, Councilman Black was like, from North Las Vegas, he was like looking for a property. He's got 1,000 things on his plate, and he was looking for a solution to this, like everybody is. But it's just a matter of like, how much are you going to look? How much are you going to prioritize this? So right. To him, he probably had 1,000 other things to do, and it wasn't a huge priority, but he did want to try to do something. He just never was able to. Joey, who's the guy from Food Not Bombs, he's really good at like pressing to get a good communication. He makes the communication happen, which is great. And he would ask them for porta potties. He would ask them for the dumpster. they would come and say, we're going to clean up and raid this encampment. They wanted to raid the city of Las Vegas and North Las Vegas, wanted to raid that encampment like 3 or 4 times. And we showed up with protests and signs saying, don't raid this encampment. At the time, it was a guideline from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, to not raid any encampments.
So before we get to the raid piece, you were able to create 26 of these. Now, you mentioned that there are about 150 individuals at this site. So less than a third, or really, I'm not great at mental math, so we'll just say less than a third had a place to go. How was the culture within that site? Were people accepting that some were able to have a hut and others were still outside, or did they go, one night in and then they rotate? How was that part?
So that encampment was around for a long time, and the homeless community has been around for a long time. So there's a lot of people who live on the streets. We started building in July, and it was raided in December. So in that period of time, there was a lot of people coming in and coming out, and we basically just made a list of people. After our first one, people would come by and say, hey, I want to get one of those. So we put their name on the list. Whoever came up and said they wanted one, we put their name on the list. We had a list of like 50 people ready, and they knew they were on the list. So we, of course, built for the first people and just did it in order. We didn't really have like this person is this qualification or this person needs this. We like this person better. It wasn't any of that. It was just simple, put your name on the list, you get it. And that worked. Some people didn't get along with other people, so we didn't put their huts next to each other. There is like some monitoring going on. Some people left their hut and didn't want it, so we gave it to the next person on the list.
And did you provide a bed in the hut as well, or what was actually inside when you opened the door to the individual seeking it?
We put a cot, because it did have room for a bed, but the cot is more like a single person, and it gives them more space if they wanted to use it for other stuff. So we put a cot and a fire extinguisher and a smoke alarm.
So they had electricity as well then, or the battery operated?
Battery
Okay.
powered.
Wow. So fire extinguisher, so you're thinking safety, fire alarm, so that people are aware if something sparks. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you really put a lot of thought and a lot of heart into this process. But what I'm hearing in this is it was a slower process, because you as an individual, of course you have your partners with this, but there was no large organization that could deliver 150 of these at one time. So you're kind of doing this step by step. You've got a system within the little small community that's existing already, and individuals are choosing to participate, and then also being patient as the process is going along. They know they won't have their hut as soon as they sign up, so they're still waiting and know that they're number 30 on the list, and here we are at number 26. And then the city comes in and demolishes this. What happened before that? Who did they contact? Did you know this was occurring? Just kind of fill me in on this gap, because I'm missing some pieces here.
So the wash is on city property. Along the wash where city everybody's trespassing. And the wash goes to the sewer and gets cleaned in the storm drain system, and goes back into Lake Mead. So technically that water is returning to Lake Mead. So now it's like a health concern of like what's going into the wash. So there's lots of like reasons that the city wouldn't want homeless people camped there. So throughout, they would be posting signs that said, you're trespassing, you have 30 days to leave. They consistently did that, and nobody ever came. We would talk to them If we felt like there was going to be a raid or there was an announcement, we'd talk and call them and say, hey, let us know what's going on. They said they would call us if they were ever going to raid so we could come move the huts. And eventually, one day, like, I guess at like 4 a.m, one of the people living in the huts gets a knock on the door and says, you have 15 minutes to leave. We're going to destroy the huts. So the person living in that hut had 15 minutes to get whatever they had and get out.
So, Robert, thank you for giving me that piece, because what I'm envisioning is just a disconnect in communication. It sounds as though there were individuals that you were working with that may not have been able to communicate clearly with their counterparts in perhaps a different part of the organization. I will just tell you, in my family, we're a small family of maybe 10 individuals on a regular basis. We have communication mishaps all the time. So on this scale, I'm just scaling this up to say, it's easy for the ball to drop. It's unfortunate. I'm not making light of what occurred, but what I'm hearing in the way that you've presented this scenario is there was someone you were dealing with, and then someone else came in and did something different than kind of what was the standing agreement. But what also concerns me is that there were notices posted giving you a 30-day window, and there was nothing more official that followed. So when you got those notices, and I understand you talked to the city or your contacts, and they said, well, we'll actually let you know when we're going to enforce it. When that happened, did you take any steps to find a new location or to begin the process of moving? Because I mean, moving a 5x10 structure is not easy. You can't just, put it, I have a little Prius, so you can't just stick it in the trunk, So it's gotta have some planning behind that. What did you do in that moment to ensure the sustainability of your work?
So, first, I should start by saying, like, the project moved forward based off of funding, and it was completely community funded. So every week we weren't sure if we were going to keep building because we weren't sure if funding would be there. So that was always like the first priority, was to keep building. Coming up with solutions to move them to a safer location is like basically finding land. To put it in perspective, we still haven't put all the huts that we've made up because there's nowhere that they will be like accepted on where they won't be destroyed. For me personally, since I know the value of like having a place, I know that people living on the streets may get a check, but it's gone within 2 weeks from staying at a weekly. I know the value of having a place even for a month. So for this $600 hut to last 6 months, that's going to save this person so much money. And it's already sustained its lifespan, in my opinion, for that, like, for its purpose. For the actual community itself, I know we need land. We're still working on it. We got funding now to buy land. We're looking for land. We're looking for a place that's going to be acceptable. We're looking through codes that are going to be like something the city can work with us on. I've had talks with the city since. Tiny home communities are like a common thing, and it shouldn't be new to people. So there's a lot of steps to make it sustainable, and it's just a matter of taking those steps. But for that encampment, the only thing that was keeping it sustainable was like the city being involved and communicating with us, and trying to work with them to make it safe and acceptable. And that's what a lot of our efforts went towards, going out there, trying to do cleanups, trying to keep the trash in the dumpsters, getting the porta potties put out there, trying to make it safe for people to walk around there, like taking care of that community and like addressing the issues that the city would bring up, like, oh, there's too much trash or it's not safe. Like, we try to address those to make that encampment more sustainable. But to them, it was just illegal outright, and they wanted it to be removed.
I see. And trespassing is illegal. We get that. And we also get that when you're putting things into the wash and that goes into the water supply, there's just a chain of effects that happens. So, we get all of that, right? And these are humans. These are people. These are our brothers and sisters and our neighbors and friends, and heck, there are enemies too, right? So, but these are humans at the core level. This is another human being that needs a place to live. When you see that and you've made these efforts to create some sort of shelter, it's not ideal. You know that. It's not what you would want. If you had the means to do something more, you certainly would. That's evident. When you do all of this work and then it comes crashing down, what motivates you to keep doing the work?
Well, knowing that I can is the biggest motivator. I know that that the things that I do are inspirational to other people, and I know that my small actions, if seen by many, will become like much more. So I'm motivated to just like be a good example of what to do right. And I know that when you get knocked down, that you could either stay down or get back up and keep going. So like when all those huts got destroyed, I knew it was a horrible thing. I could be optimistic about it. I could be pessimistic about it. But ultimately, like my decision to keep trying is going to A, motivate the people I'm trying to help, and B, motivate other people to help. So just, being a good example is what keeps me going, trying to be that light to the world, to show them like this is possible, even if like it feels like the whole like city's against you, just if you think it's right, just keep trying your best.
Yeah, that's beautiful to hear. And you are an inspiration, Robert. I'm so grateful to have been connected to you and to have this conversation, because I've had several conversations around this subject and we've touched on the encampment in each conversation, but hearing your side of it is really a light, because what I want people to hear is your heart and to understand that, no, everything didn't go the way you planned. No, it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, but you're also not stopping. It's retooling now and finding ways to do it in a way that works for everyone. And that's really what life is about. As I mentioned, my family, we have drops in communication. We also have disagreements and we can't even decide on what to eat half the time. So trying to figure out where to put people that need housing is not an easy undertaking.
No.
But I'm glad that you are in it and moving it forward. What would you say is the thing that keeps you most inspired, or what have you seen so far that has you most inspired?
Well, me and a lot of other people who see it, there's a project up in Oregon done by Square One Villages. It's called Emerald Village. And it's like this small little group of maybe like 20 tiny homes. And this guy, Andy, he got some people together that were living on the street. He said, "Hey, let's design your house." They were part of a plan to like design and build their own homes. He got the property bought. He got them moved in, and they're like working towards making payments on it, and it's going to be their home. And I think like that's a beautiful thing, to be able to give somebody a home who just needs a place and doesn't need like all the bedrooms that we have here in Las Vegas, all the huge like $250,000 homes. They're nice, but at the same time, people could just take 10% of that, and live in it and be comfortable. So that's an inspiration to me, to see that the community was supporting it, and that it's possible. And, I think people respect it, especially if they are part of owning it and it's not like a temporary thing. I think if they have ownership, I feel like that encourages them to be responsible and get to know who they're living with in the community, because there's like a security there, a stability.
Yeah, and anytime you invest something of your own into something, it gives it more meaning, whether it's your time or your creativity or financial means, whatever it may be. When you contribute, it just gives it something special, and it's almost like having a kid in a way. It's part of you. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is inspiring. There's also a community in Austin that I've been looking at, and they're doing a wonderful job. So we're trying to model that here in Las Vegas as well. So there are solutions in front of us. And I don't think that this will be a challenge we do not overcome. I do believe we will be able to provide housing to each and every individual who wants it. So what creative solutions can we as a community look towards in order to make housing more available in a very short time span?
I think we could build housing pretty affordably. It's a matter of getting an acceptable method of doing it. And usually, what people want to avoid doing is bringing down the value of their neighborhood by creating some massive like structure that doesn't have any like income or revenue to the community. So by building like individual units around town and spreading out the housing opportunities, will make a better solution to help house people who can't afford it. So what they're doing in California now is allowing ADUs, the accessory dwelling unit, to be easier to build. So people can just build one in their backyard and rent it out for a little cheaper. They can make income while providing somebody an affordable place to stay. And here in Las Vegas, we have plenty of land. A lot of people have big backyards. They could build an accessory dwelling unit, have its own separate entrance, make a little rent from renting that place out, and provide somebody a place to stay who is in need of housing. And we can, if people have no money at all that money that's spent on, social services can go to help pay that person's rent and just get them into this unit.
So an accessory dwelling unit would be like a little tiny home on someone's property. So on their backyard or the side of their home. That's what you said ADU would be.
Yes. And it has a kitchenette, it has a bathroom. You could live in there. People call them grandma's dens or casitas because, when their grandparents grow old, that's a place that they could live.
Yeah, and I have a casita on my home. I built it for my mom when she retired. So, the casita thing is common here, but I am seeing some potential around expanding this because there are a lot of people that care about our community. And this is a way that they can actively engage in providing housing while, I've said, well, if you care so much, bring them into your house, but that's uncomfortable. You don't necessarily want to live with a stranger, no matter, just safety, right? But if you had a little mini house in the back with, like you said, the separate entrance and powered and all of that, then that alleviates a lot of the concerns with what I've heard around the hut encampment. So that's something we should definitely explore. Is that a conversation you've been able to have with the city or any officials that can move that ball forward?
The city has heard about it. I've been at meetings about affordable housing that brought it up. I think it's a great idea because it doesn't concentrate the poverty. It sort of like mixes different people from socioeconomic places together so that they could share their resources, which is great. That's more of an individual thing. I think there's a lot of like need for communication between grassroots organization and the government, because the government has to consider everybody in all things. And so many grassroots organizations have the time to focus on just homelessness that they could really help bridge the gap between the community and the government getting people these services. So I really think that would be a big step, is like just the government putting it in the hands of several, if not dozens, of grassroots organizations to help this this type of like work progress.
Well, Robert, I think we just added one more project to your plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it if it does.
No, good. I think that's got energy behind it. And I've heard from the city that they want to have creative solutions. And the exact thing that you mentioned, as far as the concentration, is something that they're very much aware of. And what I've heard is often when we look at creating places for the unhoused to be housed, we look at the areas with the most poverty because the land is cheaper. And so your idea of creating this kind of spread out where the entire community gets to participate is, I think, a really good idea. And I'm going to put my brains around it too.
Yeah, cool.
With that, what other projects are you working on?
Well, so I'm involved. Like I stay pretty busy. The main project, this housing project that I'm talking about with the huts, that's taken on like a whole organization called New Leaf, the New Leaf community, Las Vegas. They're just like all over the place. They've been doing fundraising. They're finding land. We're coming up with ideas. We just put our first hut on a trailer yesterday, so it's mobile, and we're just coming up with different solutions that are affordable and sort of like community funded. Another project I work with is the Las Vegas Catholic Worker. They've been serving since 1987 here in Las Vegas, and we've been serving through the quarantine, so we've changed a bit. There's a field called the Field to a lot of the services in the historic West Side, and also the people living on the streets down here on the West Side. So the city of Las Vegas just fenced that whole field off, and now we're like serving on the sidewalk and trying to figure things out like from that end. So there's a lot of pushback there. Another group I work with is Engineers Without Borders, where we mainly do work in other countries where we help people who don't even have bathrooms, clean water, safe infrastructure. We help them develop like ideas to and go out and actually get it built. Like we're building a schoolhouse right now for this group in this small town. So that's another project I'm working on. I don't know what else.
Well, I mean, that's enough. Those are some major projects, and it's a lot. So you definitely are right. You are staying busy with this. I want to ask you to finish a few sentences for me. So I'll say the beginning part, and you finish it.
Okay.
We'll start with this. I'm proudest of
my efforts and success.
What matters most is
love and people's happiness.
I feel loved when
people smile and care or show affection, I guess.
The best things in life are
free.
Okay, it's a song title, right?
Well, so it's also sort of true.
Yeah, it really, really is. Last one. I'm here because
I have a purpose.
Beautiful. Well, Robert, I want to again thank you for your time today. It's such an honor to have this conversation and to feel your heart. Or even though we're over Zoom, I just feel the radiating love that you carry with you. Is there anything that you want to share with our audience, or any final words that you want to make sure we include?
Get involved anywhere you can. If you want to get involved with us, you can find me. My name is Robert Majors. We also do like volunteering every Friday. It's really easy to get involved. and your skills are valuable if you are interested in getting involved. So that's
Awesome.
that's it.
Is there an email address or a website they can visit?
They can visit our Instagram. It's New Leaf Community LV. So if they need to reach out, yeah.
Well, we will ensure that the Instagram ends up in the profile so people can get there really easily. And with that, I think we can leave it there.
Cool. Thanks for the interview.
Thank you for being here, Robert.